Okay, go.
Just want to start today with a trigger warning disclaimer. This podcast contains descriptions of death and drowning. Hi, I'm Katie Carpenter.
I'm Terry Kovanitz.
We apologize for any and all mistakes today as we begin this episode of Titanic Transcripts.
You were sworn a day or two ago, Mr. Marconi. I asked you, when you were on the stand before, whether you had sent any messages to the Carpathia during her voyage from the scene of this catastrophe to New York, and I recall your reply. Would you like to correct it?
Yes, sir.
Please do so.
I said that I had not sent any message as far as I could remember to the Carpathia during her voyage to New York with the survivors of the Titanic. On my return to New York after having testified, I found that I had sent one message to the Carpathia.
Have you that message?
I immediately wrote a letter to you, Senator, stating the fact and enclosing the message.
Is that the message?
Yes, this is the message and a confirmation of the Siaskinet station.
Please read the message, giving the date, hour, and to whom addressed, and all other contents.
It was transmitted on April 18th, 1912, at 1 a.m., to Cowden, Marconi Station, Siaskinet, Mass. Said following immediately, advise us delivery stop, which means full stop. Wire news dispatch immediately to Siaskinet or to Navy boats. If this is impossible, ask captain to give reason why no news allowed to be transmitted. Guglielmo Marconi. Would you like me to give the station signs also?
Yes, please give the telegram in full.
It is as follows. April 18th, 12, station sent to, time sent. Number 2, MY, number 21, AM. Cowden, Marconi Station. Send following immediately. Advise us delivery stop. Wire news dispatches immediately to Siaskinet or Navy boats. If this impossible, ask captain give reason why no news allowed to be transmitted. Guglielmo Marconi. The Siaskinet station sent to my office in New York a return of what it actually transmitted to the Carpathia, and this is the sent message. 44/3, Siaskinet Station, April 18th, 1912. Words DH, which means deadhead. Service instructions NYK, which means New York. Station sent to, time sent, by whom sent. 2. Operator SS MPA, 3:15 a.m., JC. To Operator SS MPA. Wire news dispatches immediately to Siaskinet or to Navy boats. If this impossible, ask captain, give reason why no news allowed to be transmitted. Guglielmo Marconi.
Mr. Marconi, what did JC mean on that message?
It should be the initial of the operator who sent the message.
In your New York office?
No, in the Siaskinet office. Cowden, I should say. It was this man Cowden.
Do you know who he was?
I do not know who he was.
By name?
I understand that he was the operator.
SSMPA was the cipher of the Carpathia?
Yes.
And SS meant steamship?
Steamship, yes, sir.
April 18 was the date on which the Carpathia arrived in New York.
Yes, sir. Of course, I should call your attention to the fact that it was 1 o'clock in the morning.
The times were 1 o'clock in the morning and 3:15?
Yes, sir.
Did you receive any reply?
No, sir, I did not.
Did your office receive any reply?
I do not think so.
Did you make any inquiry about it?
I made an inquiry, and I was told nothing was received.
And who told you?
Mr. Bottomley, and I believe Mr. Sammis, but I can say with certainty Mr. Bottomley.
Have you talked to the operator about it?
I beg pardon, Senator? Which operator?
Have you talked with the operator on the Carpathia about this?
No, I have not. I have talked to Bride, who was the operator of the Titanic.
He was the operator of the Titanic?
He was the operator of the Titanic and was transferred to Carpathia.
And what did Bride say about it?
If I remember correctly, well, he is here to testify himself.
I know he is here.
Well, but if I remember correctly, he did say something of that. The message was received.
But no reply was sent to you.
No reply was sent. Or at least no reply was received, I should say.
Do you know how the Chester and the Salem are equipped with wireless?
I do not.
Do you know whether the Chester and the Salem are so equipped that they can, with accuracy, communicate with other wireless stations?
I know they can communicate with accuracy, but as to how they communicate, or how far, or what power they have, I'm totally ignorant.
Do you know anything about their operators?
No, sir, I do not.
Have you any reason to believe their operators are not well qualified for their work?
I have no reason myself to believe that, except from things I have heard from operators that have testified in this inquiry.
Oh, what have you heard?
Well, I heard that they worked slowly, or that they did not seem to be well acquainted with the Continental Morse code.
And what code did they use?
I presume they used the Marconi, but I do not know.
Is there any serious difficulty in communicating between your offices and the naval offices because of the difference in code?
There would be if different codes were adhered to. It would make it extremely difficult, if not impossible, to communicate accurately.
And what code do you use?
We use the International Morse code as used in Europe and Great Britain, and as specified or determined by the international regulations on wireless telegraphy.
There does not seem to have been any difficulty in the government boat Florida and various coast stations of the government picking up these messages from the Carpathia?
No, those stations did not appear to have any difficulty.
You desire the committee to understand that these 2 telegrams I just read are the only messages you communicated to the Carpathia on the day of her arrival in New York.
Yes, sir. The only ones that I can trace and the only ones that I remember.
And the message that is signed by Mr. Marconi at 9:33 p.m. on the 18th you do not identify?
I do not identify it, and I state that it was absolutely unauthorized.
No matter who signed it.
No matter who signed it, and I state that I did not send it or authorize it to be sent.
You desire the committee to understand that you disapprove both the language of these wireless messages and the unauthorized use of your name?
Absolutely, and I wish the committee to understand that clearly.
Have you anything further you care to say to the committee, Mr. Marconi, that will throw light on the purpose of this inquiry?
I do have something further to say. I should say I have some more messages which were sent by my company to various shore stations and to the Carpathia, and with your permission I will read them, with the view of getting them into the record. I should also ask you to allow me to say that the message which I sent to the Carpathia, to which you have already referred, proves, I think, quite conclusively that I had no intention of preventing the United States Navy boats from receiving any information from the Carpathia. I was exceedingly surprised, as everybody else was at the time, that no news was coming through, and I was very much worried about it, and that day I did suggest that this message should be sent, and it was sent.
I want to ask you a straight, square question. Whether you infer that the failure of your operators to communicate with the Salem or the Chester, or with your office, or to give this news of this trip of the Carpathia to New York to the public, was influenced in any manner by the hope of reward from the sale of exclusive information in the possession of the wireless operators.
My opinion is that it was not influenced in any way, because I do not see that they had any reason to believe or to hope or to think that they were going to sell their story to anybody.
Was Mr. Binns one of your operators?
Yes, he was.
Was he one of your operators when the Republic went down?
He was.
Might not the fact that he received money for his story of that disaster have influenced these operators somewhat in their course?
Frankly, I should say no.
Officer, I want Mr. Cottam to step outside of that door while I'm directing the inquiry to Mr. Marconi.
I should say not. Mr. Binns has received a great deal of notoriety and has benefited himself by the fact of his having been on board the Republic and on duty on that occasion. I might say that he is still employed in writing newspaper articles and magazine articles about operators and the sea and ships and things of that kind, which have absolutely nothing to do with the actual facts of the loss of the Republic. It seems to me that the public interest, or the newspaper interest, becomes so great when an individual finds himself placed in the position of these men, that whatever they say that has a public interest is paid for by these enterprising American journals.
I'm going to ask you one further question. You, being the leading and most active figure in the field of wireless telegraphy, probably the most prominent man in the world in that work, and your offices being in every part of the world and on most of the ships of the sea, I ask you whether from the developments of this inquiry you do not feel that it is incumbent upon you to discourage that practice, indeed to prevent it altogether, so far as you are able?
Well, certainly, I am entirely in favor of discouraging the practice, and I naturally give very great weight to any opinion expressed by the chairman of this committee.
You have other telegrams there, and that we may not omit from the record anything that ought to be in it. I desire to ask you to read such as you ought to read, and to file such as you consider it necessary to read.
The first is a telegram dated April 15th, 1912, transmitted at 10:26 a.m., addressed to Marconi Station, Cape Race, Newfoundland. Keep us advised, Titanic, Marconi Company of America. Another message, also dated April 15th, 1912, time sent 8:46 a.m., addressed Marconi Station, Camperdown, Nova Scotia. Get us quick information, condition Titanic. Answer this office. Inocram, and that is the code signature of the Marconi Company of America. Another message dated April 16th, 1912, marked Rush. This was sent at 8:06 a.m. and addressed to Marconi Station, Camperdown, Nova Scotia. Wire present position Carpathia and Olympic, or where you think they are. Marconi Co.
You got no replies to either of those messages?
I got no replies. Another message, dated April 16th, 1912, and marked Rush, addressed to Marconi Station, Camperdown, Nova Scotia. Franklin White Star desires to know why they are not receiving messages from Carpathia. Rush answer. Marconi Co.
And what time was this?
It was sent at 3 p.m. on April 16th. Another message is dated April 16th, 1912. Time sent 4 p.m. Addressed to Marconi Station, Cape Race, Newfoundland. Can you give us any information of the Californian? Has she any passengers? Marconi Co. Another message dated April 16th, 1912, addressed Marconi Station, Cape Race, Newfoundland. Franklin White Star desires to know why they not receiving messages from Carpathia. Rush answer. Marconi Co. Another message dated April 16th, 1912. Time sent 3 a.m. Address to the Marconi Station, Cowden, Siaskinet, Mass. If you have any names of passengers on Carpathia, rush here. Marconi Co.
I understand that you received no reply to these messages.
Well, I do think there was a reply to some of them.
Have you any replies? If so, please read them in connection with the messages.
I am sorry to say that I have not the replies with me.
If there are replies to any of those messages, I should like to have them.
You will certainly have them. I will telegraph for them if they are not here. I have a very few more to read, but some of them may be material, and I will ask your indulgence. Here is another message dated April 16th, 1912. Time sent 8:15 a.m. Addressed to Marconi Station, Cape Race, Newfoundland. Can't you inform us Virginian's position or whether she had any Titanic passengers? Rush. Marconi Co. I wish to call the attention of the committee particularly to this message in view of the fact that it shows that the company had no intention of keeping the news exclusively for one paper. It was sent April 16th, 6:50 p.m., Marconi Station, Siaskinet, Mass. Fitting tug with plane set sailing from Newport Wednesday morning, chartered by New York American. Binns and Elschneider aboard. Theirs will be all collect. Give them good attention. Call letters JB. Stop. Wave will probably be short. Marconi Co. The same message, the same words, were sent to the Marconi Station at South Wellfleet, Mass. It is as follows. Fitting tug with plane set sailing from Newport Wednesday morning, chartered by New York American. Binns and Ellenschneider aboard. Theirs will be all collect. Give them good attention. Cell letters JB. Stop. Wave will probably be short. Marconi Co. Another message dated April 17th, 1912. Time sent 12:37 p.m. Addressed to Christensen Marconi Station, South Wellfleet, Mass. Is Carpathia in communication with Cape Cod or Siaskinet? Marconi Co. And a further message, April 17th, sent at 9:40 p.m., addressed to Cowden, Siaskinet. Do all possible. Ascertain if Astor on Carpathia. F.M. Samus. And a further message of April 17th, sent at 8:28 p.m., addressed to Ward Marconi Station, Sagaponack, text. Tug's salutation, call K, fitted coil plane, aerial leaving New London. Marconi Co. I also call attention to the following message, dated April 17th, sent at 4:34 p.m., addressed to Marconi Station, Seagate, New York. The text is as follows. South Wellfleet, Siaskinet, Sagaponack, and Seagate will handle Carpathia's business exclusively. All other commercial and government stations will cease transmitting while Carpathia's business is being exchanged with the above-mentioned stations. No work other than Carpathia and business from government ships going to meet Carpathia will be permitted. Marconi Wireless Telegraphy Company of America.
What was the date of that message?
The 17th of April, and the time was 4:34 p.m.
And this was Wednesday.
That was Wednesday.
At 4:43 p.m.
Yes, sir.
Is that what you call a silence injunction?
I should call it an instruction to direct a station that had no business to be working in connection with the Carpathia not to interfere. This also stated that privilege or precedence should be given to Carpathia's business and to the business of government ships going to meet the Carpathia. I think these instructions are very definite.
Government stations were all silenced, and South Siaskinet, Sagaponack, and Seagate were left free to do business with the Carpathia.
Yes, sir, and with the government ships.
And these stations were left free to do business with government ships.
Yes, sir. I think, as I stated before, that an arrangement had been arrived at between us and the government for the purpose of expediting the receipt of any news.
Yes, but no work other than the Carpathia's business from government ships going to meet the Carpathia was to be permitted. That says from government ships. Is that a limitation on their right to receive messages?
No, sir. It was intended that any communication to or from government ships might be had.
It does not say that. It says from government ships going to meet the Carpathia.
I think it would be understood the way I state it.
It was intended they should have the right to communicate as well as to receive?
Certainly. It was intended that way. I have here a further message dated April 18th, 1912, sent at 1:25 p.m., addressed to Sam Small, Tug Mary Scully, call JB. Transfer at once Jack Binns to Carpathia, also Howley and Dunn. Carpathia operator exhausted. Signed McGrath and Samus.
And what date is that?
April 18th.
Thursday.
Yes.
Do you know about what time of day that was?
1:25 p.m. A further message dated April 18th, 1912. The time sent was blank. Addressed to Ward Sagaponack. Reads as follows. Endeavor learn from if Isidore Strauss or wife aboard. Samus.
What date is that?
April 18th, but no time mark.
That indicates you had in your possession no information whatever regarding the loss of Mr. and Mrs. Strauss up to the day the Carpathia reached New York.
Yes, sir. And there is a further message dated April 18th, 1912. Time sent 1 p.m. Addressed to Ward Sagaponack. Text. Personal for me. Make every effort to learn. If Chaz M. Hayes, Grand Trunk President on Carpathia, wire me quick. Samus.
That is the same date?
That is the same date, sir. I also have a further message, which, on this copy, has not a date, but the time sent is 10:52 a.m., addressed to Marconi Station, Sable Island, Nova Scotia. The text. Franklin, White Star Line, wishes to know if his message to Carpathia requesting names of remaining additional survivors and crew was delivered. If no, try rush delivery and obtain reply. Inocram.
If I recollect it, the list of survivors that came by wireless was transmitted by way of the Cape Race station.
I believe so. I do not remember.
Am I right that Mr. Bride was the operator who sent those names? Did you send those names, Mr. Bride?
Yes, sir. Those were only the names of the first and second class passengers, Senator Smith.
The names of the third class passengers came by way of the Chester. Did you send those, Mr. Bride?
I sent those, yes, sir.
Okay. I want to know, Mr. Marconi, how you account for your inability to get any reply from the Carpathia to those numerous messages sent by the chief officers of the Marconi Company between Monday, the day the Carpathia started with those survivors to New York, and Thursday night up to the landing of the Carpathia in New York.
I have no explanation to give, except I believe the operators were busy all the time transmitting messages from the survivors which were on the Carpathia to their families. I do not know whether the captain of the Carpathia had any reason or any intention not to transmit information, which he had.
I do. I know that the captain did not have any such disposition or desire, and that he officially disclaimed to me personally and any responsibility, therefore, both on the night I talked with him on the Carpathia upon her arrival, and I think the testimony given by him the following day. Mr. Marconi, if, as a matter of fact, the wireless operators on the Carpathia were busy transmitting other business, indeed so busy that they could not answer messages from the managing officers of your company which employed them, is there not some means of ascertaining that fact definitely by checking up their accounts and reports made to your company of the exact business they did during those 4 days?
Yes, but that would require time, in consequence of the fact that the Carpathia left with all records of the messages received on the Carpathia and transmitted from the Carpathia. I have no knowledge whether some of these messages, which were sent to shore stations for transmission to the Carpathia, were received on the Carpathia or not.
According to the testimony of Mr. Cottam, he was so weary from constant vigil that he fell asleep at his post, and I have been unable to discover any great amount of business that was transacted between Monday and Thursday by the operators. If they did some business, but just how busy they were with the outside messages is not very clear to me. If there is any method by which your office can find out just how much business was done and with whom it was transacted, I shall appreciate it if you will get that information for us. For instance, if Mrs. Widener or Mrs. Thayer or Mrs. Astor or any of the other women who were aboard the ship and naturally wanted to communicate with their homes here, or all of the passengers for that matter, and the wireless operators had been doing that business for the passengers, the public would have had the tidings from those sources, and your messages indicating solicitude about the presence of Mr. Hayes aboard the Carpathia and those other gentlemen right up to Wednesday indicates that their relatives were not advised either in Canada or in this country. I do not want to leave any uncertainty about this wireless feature of this catastrophe, because I think it goes squarely to the crux of this whole matter. Following the collision, and your disposition to help clear it up, I appreciate. But I do not want to leave it in just the shape it is now. Were you going to say something, Mr. Samus?
I handled the messages for the Vice President of the Grand Trunk Railway and for Mr. Astor, and would have handled them for anybody else who had come to the headquarters in order to obtain help, and I would say that both Mr. Kelly and Mr. Hayes of the Grand Trunk said that the whole Pacific coast in Canada were waiting for confirmation of the news which they had received by the Canadian station that Mr. Hayes was not on board by any means of this message which has been read to you, and I obtained confirmation of news which they already had. That also applies for the Astor family.
I am not inquiring particularly about individuals.
Well, I mean that all these people had received word before and have learned since the Carpathia arrived that messages were being handled at the rate of 40 and 50 an hour sometimes, and that probably not less than 4,000 or 5,000 words of urgent personal telegrams from the survivors of the Titanic were handled, and we have copies of such messages.
From what stations?
From the 4 stations that have been named.
Sent to the Carpathia and from the Carpathia?
Mostly from the Carpathia. The Carpathia would not, or did not apparently wish to accept any messages to him because he considered, and rightly so I think, that these had a prior right, and that the people who were most directly concerned and who were in the greatest anguish were the people who had survivors on board the Carpathia, and they wanted to know they were safe. I think these messages were not made public to any degree. I have not, as yet, seen one complaint from any survivor on the Carpathia about his inability to get messages ashore.
It appears from Mr. Franklin's testimony that the White Star offices were crowded all day with persons seeking information from people on board.
Well, I think that could be very easily accounted for by the very example I have noted, that the Grand Trunk officials had had 2 messages that Mr. Hayes was not on board, but they still wanted one more word in order to make sure. I think I replied to the question, but I want to say something in regard to this, if I may. I have spoken to the operator bride since he arrived, and he told me that several hundred messages, 400 or 500 messages, had been transmitted from the Carpathia and acknowledged by the land stations. They were all messages to relatives of the survivors or to relatives of those who had perished.
How can we ascertain whether any messages were transmitted by Mr. Ismay to the Olympic from the Carpathia and from the Olympic to the White Star offices in Liverpool? Is there any way to ascertain those facts?
The only way is to go through the records of the messages of the ships. I am assuming that I am practically before a court of law and bound to give up these messages. There is something in the English law which prevents disclosing the messages.
I do not think you are committing any offense by giving them up.
Yes, I have gone on that assumption as to every message that I have gotten hold of here in America. I have produced every material message.
How can we ascertain what messages were sent by telephone from New York to Montreal and from Montreal to Cape Race or Nova Scotia stations and then to the ship?
I think, as to the telephone messages, you can only have the testimony of those who sent them, but the messages sent to the ship should be recorded on the proper forms. Of course, I am prepared to admit, perhaps due to the fact that the operators were exhausted and tired on the Carpathia, that some of the messages may not have been recorded. I do not say they were not, but they may not have been. In the ordinary course of events, however, they should all be recorded, and I have no reason to believe that they were not recorded in this instance.
Do you not regard it as a little singular, to say the least, that the sinking of the Titanic should not become known at the White Star offices until they received official information of the fact from Captain Haddock of the Olympic well on toward midday on Monday?
It doubtless appears strange to one not acquainted with the exact facts, but if the facts as they have been reported to me are correct, a very easy explanation can be given.
All right.
The Carpathia, I understand, reached the position of the disaster early in the morning and picked up the survivors. Its wireless installation was not powerful enough to reach shore stations in such a manner as to transmit accurate messages. What is the ship you mentioned, the Olympic?
I mentioned the Olympic because that seems to be the source from which this information came to Mr. Franklin.
The Olympic heard of the accident, and by means of her more powerful installation was able to transmit, I believe, to Cape Race. But so far as I know, the Olympic did not send this message until late in the afternoon, or at least midday.
Suppose the Olympic were between Cape Race and the Carpathia, and only about 300 miles from the Carpathia. Do you not think that the Olympic might have been utilized by the Carpathia to have given information?
Well, I have no report of what actually happened, but I should say 300 miles was a little too great a distance for the Carpathia to accurately transmit messages to the Olympic.
What wavelength were they using on the Carpathia?
I do not know, but they must have been using one of the authorized wavelengths.
They were using the 600-meter wavelength?
Yes, sir.
And that 600-meter wavelength ought to have put them in touch with the station 300 miles away.
Not necessarily. It depends on the power behind that wavelength.
From the messages received and picked up from time to time by the Californian and by the Frankfurt, their apparatus was working fairly well.
Yes, I think it was. But I beg to recall that the captain of the Carpathia, the operators, and myself, I think, have already testified that the maximum reliable range of the wireless outfit on the Carpathia was 200 miles.
Yes, that was the reliable range. But in the nighttime, that range could be exceeded with 600 wavelengths by considerable.
Yes, but not in a reliable manner. You could not always rely at night upon sending a further 200 miles, although on occasion you might transmit messages 500 miles.
Suppose I'm able to demonstrate that, as a matter of fact, using 600 wavelength, it was recorded 500 miles from this place. Then what would you have to say about it?
I should say that it was exceptionally favorable circumstances.
But not very unusual.
I do not understand what you mean by unusual.
I mean, so extraordinary as to excite surprise upon your part.
No, not so unusual as to excite surprise, but I should say it was a condition of things that occurs perhaps once, perhaps 3 or 4 times during each night as a rule.
You can understand, Mr. Marconi. I do not like to seem to be so minute or to press you so hard, but holding in my hand a telegram signed White Star Line dated at 8:27, the evening following the sinking of the ship, and saying, Titanic proceeding to Halifax, passengers will probably land there Wednesday, all safe, I am admonished to find out if possible, and am determined to do it upon what that information was based.
And I am at your disposal to help you to the best of my ability.
If there are any replies to any of these messages you have filed, we would like to have them.
Some replies were received with reference to the station with which ship was in communication, but no news of any importance was obtained.
I should like to see the replies. If they were replies to these messages or replies to the messages picked up by the Navy Department at their station, which are already in the record and with which you are familiar.
I might say that one reply contained the list of survivors, which I believe was received at the same time that the White Star Company received it. I know we showed it to them, and they looked it over and thought it was about the same as they already had.
You say, Mr. Marconi, that arrangements were made to let a tugboat put representatives of the New York American and Mr. Binns on board the Carpathia. Did you personally have any arrangement with the New York American of any kind?
None whatever, and I did not know anything of it.
Had your office any arrangement?
Well, apparently my office had.
Do you know what the arrangement was?
No, I do not.
What position does Operator Binns hold within your company?
I believe he does not hold any position.
Oh. Do you know what he is doing now? I mean, what his vocation is?
I think he is engaged in journalistic work.
Have you said all you think you can say to throw any light upon this inquiry?
So far as it occurs to me, yes. I should like permission to correct a slight error in the record made perhaps by the stenographer by reason of my pronunciation, which changes the sense of one of my answers. At page 1217 of the testimony given on the 6th day, April 25th, at the top of the page, my answer says that I am consulted with regard to all technical details concerning operators installed on ships generally. It should read concerning apparatus installed on ships generally. Further down on the same page, in the same answer, it reads, for the business details and for the general management of the company, there is a managing director or general manager who attends to all the work of engaging operators and engaging ship owners. And that should read, negotiating with ship owners. There are slight slips in the record in addition to that, but they do not change the sense of the answers, and they are more or less obvious.
There's no confusion over Mr. Binns, as I understand. He is the same man who was the operator on the Republic at the time of the Republic disaster?
Yes, sir.
Is that all?
Yes. If you will allow me to state, I will say that I propose sailing for England tomorrow. I can stay in Washington until perhaps 2 or 3 this afternoon, but it is very important for my business that I should be able to go over to England, and therefore I wish to inform you of my intention of doing so.
I asked for certain information from your company the other day in New York when you were on the stand, and you said you would furnish it.
I have taken steps to obtain it.
And I may rely on Mr. Bottomley and Mr. Sammis?
You can rely on me, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Marconi could not do it any better than these other gentlemen. Of course, I shall be at your disposal so far as I can be in England, obtaining anything you desire. And in that connection, Mr. Chairman, will you bear in mind that these private messages that were received and sent from the Carpathia are protected by the law. We are precluded by the law from disclosing such messages, and there is a penalty provided for telegraph operators who disclose them. Whether there is a penalty against the wireless company or not, I do not know. But such messages should not be disclosed unless it is necessary. We can state how many were received and all that.
I quite agree with you, Governor, that there is a penalty for disclosing a telegram, but I do not agree that there is a penalty or any jurisdiction that will hold you responsible for giving us wireless messages received at sea.
You understand, Mr. Chairman, that the wireless messages received at sea were received on the Carpathia.
Exactly.
And she is a foreign ship in foreign waters, and it is impossible for us to produce those messages now.
Oh, I understand that.
Nor do I know that we have any compulsory process to produce them. They are not under jurisdiction of the American company.
I have not asked for any compulsory process on the Carpathia or its officers, but I have had the voluntary promise of the Marconi Company that those messages would be produced. And if they can be, you say you will produce them?
If the chairman will state now or subsequently exactly what he wants, so far as the law and circumstances permit it, if we can do it compulsory, we will, and if we can do it diplomatically, we will.
The committee would like any answer received by the Marconi Company or any constituent company to the messages that have already been put in evidence. We would like the volume, and so far as practicable, the contents of any message sent from the Carpathia after the accident to the officers of the Marconi Company. We would like any communications received by the Marconi Company or any of its stations signed by Mr. Ismay or his code signature, or by Mr. Franklin or his code signature, and by any other officers in the White Star Company or the International Mercantile Marine Company bearing in any way upon the accident which resulted in the sinking of the Titanic. Do I make myself clear?
Yes, sir. I beg to say that all the service messages, that is, to the officers of the Marconi Co., will be produced. but they will have to be collected from these various stations where they have been received. So far as messages from Mr. Ismay to the White Star Line and other messages of that kind, which come within the class of private, are concerned, I beg now to call attention to the articles of the International Convention, which bind the parties to take all necessary measures for the purpose of ensuring the secrecy of the correspondence and its safe transmission. And as to those matters, the company will have to take into consideration the legality and propriety of producing such messages if they have them.
I think I understand you, but I desire the records to show that the United States government is not yet a party to the Berlin Convention.
That is a telegraph convention.
This applies to the Berlin Convention?
This article applies to the wireless convention as well, yes.
It applies to both?
Yes.
I will complete what I was going to say. I desire the record to show that the United States government is not yet a party to the Berlin Convention, and while the treaty has been ratified by the Senate, there has been no exchange of ratification up to this time, and consequently, the United States is at this time in no manner bound, nor the jurisdiction of the committee limited by that treaty. That is all, Mr. Marconi, and I thank you for coming here.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman and gentlemen. Any messages, if there were any, and that I do not know, to Mr. Ismay or White Star Line from the Carpathia, would have been received at some wireless station and forwarded by telegraph. Certainly the laws of this country forbid the disclosure of those voluntarily, as I understand it.
Do you hold that it would prevent the disclosure of the entire communication, or that part of it which reaches our jurisdiction when it reaches the shore telegraph office?
When it reaches the wireless office for transmission, you mean?
Yes.
I say that I would have to take that under advisement. I shall advise the company, as its general counsel, to do whatever the law will permit to favor the wishes of the committee. Beyond that, I should advise them, if it is contrary to law, that they could not do it.
That is all we ask.
I have been authorized by Mr. Ismay to say that he would be quite willing, if it would facilitate matters, to have any wireless telegraph company, or any other telegraph company, or any cable company, and you can authorize them, expose either any messages sent or messages received by Mr. Ismay at any time during the accident or after the accident, and the same statement is made for the International Mercantile Marine Company or the White Star Line, and myself personally, Mr. Franklin, so we open the gates wide so far as that is concerned. Well, in view of that statement, I am absolved entirely, I presume.
And that makes the matter very easy for us, and we will ask for such messages as we want or need.
We will give at once the different stations orders to send copies of all these messages, and will report them to the committee as soon as we can collect them. I should imagine you would like to have them all together and not have them produced in installments.
We should like to have them as soon as possible, and you are all excused.
Okay, so we're doing a correction, like juicy.
Boom, boom, boom. Oh, I know.
Starting right away with the...
Lots of stuff to
Would
talk
you
about.
like to correct that statement?
You know, what a smarty pants.
I know.
So smarmy.
So sassy.
Weird. I did not know SS meant steamship. On like SS Carpathia, SS...
Yeah, I never thought about it.
So,
I know HMS is Her Majesty's ship, but then I never thought... So
yeah,
that was cool.
SS everything, so
Yeah.
that's ding dong.
Cool to know.
New info. And I love that Smith is like, I don't want to hear any rumors unless it's smack talk
Yeah,
about
some
the
juicy
operators.
gossip, about how slow they were and how they didn't know the Morse.
Tell me what you heard.
Yeah, what then?
Yeah, just...
Yeah, I wrote that down too. Little gossip.
And didn't Marconi give permission to Bride and Cottam to sell their...
Yeah,
story?
I thought that before it was like...
Because they were like, no, we got to
It's fine if they...
first.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I do appreciate, though, that Marconi he's got his employees' backs, and he says,
Yes.
No, I don't think that was the drive.
And he is...
they wouldn't withhold, they wouldn't do that.
He is the king of the back pedal. I'm going to tell you. That's pretty impressive. And it was very smart of everybody to say, nobody be doing telegrams right now while these people are doing theirs.
Yeah, because
you
can't get... And again, I had to remind myself, so I do want to say this for our listeners, that this is a new technology, and that the first Marconi telegraph thing was invented in 1895, so people, you know, it's been a few, you know, almost 20 years and people have been using it, but it's not, you know, so commonplace, or they don't have a lot of these rules in place that we would think automatically.
Right.
So there is, you know, especially later when they start talking about the legality of releasing things.
And we'll get to that because that was really interesting. But I did appreciate the senator trying to explain to Marconi how this whole telegram business works.
I was like, oh my goodness, with the mileage.
You know, how Marconi kept his cool, I even know.
Right? He's like a literal genius sitting here in front of this blubbering, like...
And I'm going to tell you how this works now.
If I could prove it, then what would you say?
I'd say, duh.
I'd say I told you it could happen.
I know, so much, but it's jumped everywhere, and so much, blah, 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 so everywhere. Yeah. Bins, how was he chosen to go to Carpathia? And we hadn't heard of that before.
Yeah, I
was new.
Very curious character, because I like how when they're talking about the money incentive, and he's like, well, was it Mr. Bins? And... Marconi says he was.
But then they're transferring him to the Carpathia to help with, because he's exhausted.
Yeah, it was
How did
crazy.
he get picked?
I know.
Well done, Vince.
And then he's in journalism, so also, I mean, no
double
wonder
whammy.
The media knew right away and things like that. Like, it is, I put that I want to sort of read a little bit more about Bins later and see how he was so up in there already if he wasn't working for anyone. But also... Okay, did that just chap your hind end or what? I don't know what he was doing from Monday to... He said he was exhausted and fell asleep, but I have yet to see why.
Oh, I know. He said that before, too.
Yeah, thank goodness for Samus and Marconi.
Yeah, Samus was great with his slam and boom.
That he sent 5,000 messages and that he was at a rate of 40 to 50 an hour, and this isn't a phone call. You gotta...
And that he was that he agrees that that's what he should have been doing. Yeah. Not answering everybody's little piddly questions about...
Yeah, and I like how Marconi also stressed a couple times, you know, that these were sent, but we can't say if they were received because it was an emergency.
Right.
And he was busy and exhausted. And I just could not believe Senator Smith just acting like Cottam had nothing to do with it. And that they removed him.
Yeah. So that he couldn't hear the answer, so that he wouldn't be saying the same story, you know. I know. Smith was in rare form today. And if I had to say, so what is the hour and the date? One more time after Marconi said it at the beginning.
Said it every time.
Every single one. And then every single one. So what was the date?
Yeah, how embarrassing for you.
I know. It's like, aw.
And of course, Ismay. We got to bring Ismay.
Yep.
Like he's sending secret things.
And I agree that is personal. And that he's not in any official capacity on this ship, and he should not have to give his stuff. And I just was so proud of that Griggs for getting in there and saying, no, you can't have it.
Yeah, what if he was sexting?
And it was ha-ha, and then cut off at the knees, boom.
He already gave permission.
He's allowed. He's like, well, then I guess I don't have anything more to say here, do I? I'm absolved.
But I mean, also good for Ismay that he's being fully transparent, and it doesn't seem like he has anything to hide anyways, so
no.
And I did look up, I was very curious in the beginning-ish when Senator Smith's like, so that message on April 5th or April 18th, you say you didn't send it, and you know, so I looked up what it was because I couldn't, my memory is just too fuzzy, and I'm sure we've heard it before, but just to refresh everybody. It says, the AI overview on my phone says that the telegram Marconi denied sending on April 18th was a message from the Carpathia to the Titanic, informing the Titanic that it had reached a safe position and that its wireless operators were able to hear the Titanic distress signals. Marconi denied sending this particular message because it was actually transmitted by the wireless operators of the Carpathia, not by him. But the message was crucial in confirming the Titanic's location and enabling rescue efforts.
Thank you.
But I was just curious what that mystery message was.
And I maybe all these messages to the family members were how the reporters knew about it.
Yeah, that's true.
That was a mystery for us
a family member could have... If the sailors know that they could get money, the family members might get money.
And the reporters had to see all these telegraph delivery guys running through the night.
Yeah, what's going on?
In the street and tapping on all these houses.
That's true. That's true.
I think that makes sense now. But this jumped all over the place, and I don't know, but it made me very angry. I don't know particularly why, but I
want to ask you a straight, square question.
I know. Yeah.
If I could prove to you
that you don't know anything about
the technology you invented,
and that will just show you. Thanks
for hanging on with this one, guys.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was probably too much for my brain to take in. But,
I think so.
Wow, it did jump. Okay, so that's it. We're done for today. We'll see you next time.
Bye. Just a note from the readers, we want to thank you guys for listening, and we really value your feedback, so please let us know what you're thinking, either in the comments or at titanictranscripts@gmail.com.